Hey, Aaron. So the goal of this meeting is to finalize or come to close to an agreement for the after script, um, ensuring that the after script will run even if the job is cancelled. Um, we've discussed this with a few folks from the CI team, um, previously Drew and also Gregosh. But we never really sat down and actually said, okay, we're going to implement it this way. The work from the runner is almost finished. We just have a few questions on how certain things are going to work on the Rails side. So let me share my screen so we can go through the agenda together. Can everyone see the agenda correctly?
Yes.
Awesome. So the first point is how we're gonna tell the runner to actually run the after script even if the job is cancelled, right? Now, at this point, just to give some technical background, is Rails tells the runner, hey, run these steps, right? And the step is a definition of like the script that the user has, the name of the script, and so on and so forth. And one of those definition has the keyword when. Now, by default, keyword when is on success at the moment. We're saying for the after script only, Rails will start sending default when equals graceful, meaning the runner will say, okay, this means the after script needs to run when it's graceful, meaning if the job is cancelled, if the job failed, if the job is successful. So if any result, even cancelled, will run the after script. Now, this brings a bit more complications on the Rails side here. For us to respect the when, it's completely fine and it's fairly easy to do for the after script, even for any step in the future. What becomes more complex and I'm still a bit hazy about is the after script can write, can do echo and so on and so forth, right? It can update the job log. But when the job is cancelled, on the Rails side, the CI job token that we use to authenticate with the GitLab API is invalidated, right? So we need to make it in a way that the CI job token is still valid, so we can keep updating the job trace. Gregor, at the moment, do you have any concerns, any observations that you'd like to voice up?
Not really. I think that how it's going to behave on the Rails side is more like implementation detail, probably. So we typically expose details about the job to a runner whenever it actually picks a job through the runner's API. So there's this register job endpoint, and runner will receive information about the job, including that there is a graceful after script provided there, and that canceling the job in a usual way is probably not really a good idea. Instead, we need to change the workflow from just interrupting and canceling to graceful teardown, which means that we probably cancel the script, but the after script is still going to run. And how this is going to be handled on the Rails side is probably an implementation detail that a Rails, the backend engineer that's going to implement that will need to handle. I think that basically we in case of a job being configured with interruptible graceful, we can't just change status to cancelled. Instead, we are probably going to do a two-step cancel. So first one will be probably noting somehow that the job is in a tear down state. And once the tear down state is done, then only then we are going to change the state to cancelled. And how this is going to be implemented in a job state machine that probably depends on small details about how we handle state transitions and stuff like that. But yeah, I feel like it's probably something that an engineer who's going to work on that, we need to untangle. But I don't expect this to be like really tough.
Uh, the reason I ask this is because the only way the runner can know if the job has been cancelled or is in teardown state is um, by receiving a response from Rails saying, "Hey, this job state is X." Now, if it's like imagine we decide on the word teardown, right? So that means when the word is teardown, we're gonna stop whatever we're doing. So imagine it's doing a git clone, for example, or executing the script section. We have to stop that and then execute the after script. So we need to know when the actual job is in teardown state or whatever state we call it. So then the runner can say, okay, we got that job status. Let's move on to the next one on the one section, for example.
Well, I think I get that, but whether it's going to be a job state or some kind of decoration on top of a job, it probably doesn't really matter. What matters is that a runner will have this information that we entered a tear down state, and we are probably going to expose that through existing mechanism
Yeah,
of
that
a
is
trace.
that is understandable. But before we merge this merge request, we need to know what those states are because we cannot merge it without knowing what the implementation is going to look like from an API perspective. Like we need to know what the API is going to return to the runner to indicate that the job is in the teardown state. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense, but I guess that it's more like um, a process situation in which we basically have to merge requests where each they both depend on each other, and how
Yeah.
to sequence them. And how I usually approach this situation is to do something in the runner or GitLab, wherever I'm actually changing anything, do something else on the Rails side, and then there's a third merge request, either in one, another one, or both, that basically connect all the bricks together.
Okay.
So that's also kind of a detail on how the iteration is going to look like. But I think it's okay to approach this with some questions and then find answers for them as we actually write code. And
Okay.
after we build that, in, we
Hey, I'm
can.
sorry, this is Darren. Just to clarify my understanding. So are we saying we can merge the runner change without the API endpoints being defined?
We can, but they might not work out of the box. Depends
Okay.
on what the API decides to return.
Yeah, so please don't forget about this awesome feature called runner features, right? It exists in the runner and it exists on Rails, and it allows runner and Rails to negotiate the features that they do support in case of in case of detecting a dependency on a feature that is not supported by either one or another. We basically fail a job, and we present this error to a user that there is something that's incompatible here. But if we merge that change in a runner, the new runner is going to talk to an old Rails application that do not have this feature. Everything should be fine because it's a Rails part that defines this dependency, that there is a new configuration option that the Rails should support. It's not something like runner can only work when there is something on the Rails side. It's the opposite, right? So I think that I don't see how this could be problematic on the runner side right now after we merge.
Okay. And I guess we just need to make sure that the CI job token is still available um, when the job is in the teardown state or anything like that.
Yeah, so
Now,
it's actually not going to be a state. It's the state is probably going to be running because technically job is still running. The tear down is kind of a decorator.
okay,
job status, but it's not really a status. Like it all depends on how you think about that, but there are two ways we can approach that from the backend. We can make tear down a status or make it a decorator. We support both ways. And I guess that we are going to decide on which way is better as we go whenever someone actually goes to the code and decides which way it's going to be easier to build and it's going to be more, conceptually integral, however you say.
Yeah. And when it's in this state, or whatever the state is, even from a decorator perspective, what do you think the timeout should be? Imagine that the job is has a 1 hour timeout, right?
So
If
I
the
think that
job,
nothing should change if we think about tear down state as a job running. It means that the timeout still applies. Like
okay, sounds
if we
good.
put a timeout during the tear down, timeout should override the tear down, and we should basically start working instantly.
Okay. Um, I think my last question is how will this one, still from point number one, is how will the user define this behavior? Is there, because some people, like for example, looking at the proposal at the moment on the issue, the user has to set interruptible colon graceful, right?
Yeah, so it's more like a matter of backward compatibility. We cannot break compatibility and
Yeah.
cannot suddenly change behavior of how jobs are being processed. So this, in my opinion, this should be an opt-in mechanism, and users opt-in by specifying graceful, interruptible graceful configuration in their YAMLs.
Okay. And regarding artifacts uploads, I'm guessing we will not be uploading any artifacts or anything like that, just because this is a new state. So when failure or when successful does not apply. Does that make sense to you? Or
I'm not sure I
this is
understand,
mostly a product question than anything else?
but I don't understand what you mean. Can you elaborate? Because for me, tear
Sure.
down means running. So if a job is concluded and after the tear down, there are new artifacts to be uploaded, then
But if the job is cancelled, that means that does that mean it's a successful job? Because some users, for some users, when I ask this directly, for some users it means it's a failed job. Does that make sense? So we need to upload the failed artifacts, not the successful artifacts.
that's a good question. And to be honest, I don't have an answer on top of my mind. So we would probably need to think about what happens. Eventually, we can add a new when keyword to artifacts that will include this edge case. And yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Maybe the best, as I said, this is mostly a product question. Maybe but the best way forward is to have a new one keyword. We call it grayscale or teardown, whatever, and then we'll respect that for the artifacts as well.
When you say respect it, you mean in the case of that keyword?
Yeah. So, for example, the user in the GitLab CI YAML file can specify when a colon graceful upload these artifacts, and then when the user cancels the job and it's a graceful cancellation, we run the after script, and then after we run the after script, we actually take a look at the artifacts that need to be uploaded for that specific use case.
Okay. And so that would be on runner side handling that, when on Rails side we send that keyword.
Exactly, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
I think those are all of my questions.
I have follow-on questions.
Yeah.
Steve, before I jump to my follow-on question, so can we just summarize what the the current implementation plan is, and then what the end user experience is in relation to the implementation plan? So at a high level, first thing is the runner change that we're close to getting merged. So that is going to be merged in 13.3, right?
Yes. So I would say the one this merge request specifically, this one. We can. Basically, we will just respect the one keyword is going to be a new keyword. And then if we decide there's a better name for it, we can always change it later on. It's a very simple change to do. We can merge it in 13.3 and it will be like hidden in the sense because the Rails will never send this new one keyword. So runner will always ignore it. So it will always work as it is right now. And then we can add this features toggle thing that Gregor mentioned, saying, hey, I respect graceful after script, for example. And then Rails will negotiate with that features later on. And then the Rails team can work on the implementation details. They'll tell us, hey, this is the new state that the job is going to be in when the user press the graceful cancellation. I'm just going to call that now because we don't have a word for it. And then the runner will actually trigger the cancellation and go to the after script, and then we'll continue iterating on that with the artifacts as we discussed. Does that make sense?
That makes sense to me. So the way how I'm going to communicate it on the runner roadmap / direction page, because I'm actually calling out the run after script feature in the runner on the direction page in the updates. Is like, hey, in the runner core code base, we're adding this capability. I'm going to try to make it clear that, to Steve's point, the capability will be quote unquote hidden. There will be no behavior change until these other issues in GitLab CI, the other issues are implemented so that you can actually see it in Rails. I'm trying to make sure that's articulated very clearly. So then maybe in your issue, you might, I don't know if you need to wordsmith your issue. So to Jason's point, I think in the comments, in some of the comments, we just need to make it clear, like when does the end user get the final product, if you will, the final feature, when you can actually use the final feature.
Gotcha.
That makes sense to me. So Steve, quick follow-on question. So that takes, I think in my mind, and I'm just not really catching up on all the intricate discussions on this whole after script thing, the current implementation plan. Just help me understand that other issue that Lubel created, the respect one another failure. How does that fit in, or maybe it doesn't even fit in? It's at my 0.7 on the.
That is a follow-up kind of iteration from the runner team to help Rails do this stuff automatically. So basically, as we said, Rails tells the runner what to do, right? And Rails is telling the runner, hey, execute these steps. And at the moment, these steps are 3. The before script and script, that's one step, the after script, and then there's another script, another step. Now, all these steps is a definition, right, of what script to use, when to use it, and the timeout. And at the moment, the when and the timeout are not being respected. The runner creates its own logic behind it. Now, for the after script, we're going to start respecting the when keyword, but in the future, we wanted to respect the when keyword for any step. So in the future, from the runner perspective, Rails defines all the behavior of when things should be executed. At the moment, the runner defines it, but we want to move it to Rails because of other features like the release keyword. That's how it's used. It's using the steps feature, but it's not using the one, for example. So this enables Rails team to quickly iterate on what scripts to run, when to run them, for example. Imagine that they want to, I don't know, have a ECS deployment, right, automatically by specifying a specific keyword on the GitLab CI YAML file. The user just specifies, hey, ECS deploy, and then Rails will create this massive step to deploy to ECS, and then runner will just execute it because Rails told it. But at the moment, we do not do this. That's why we want to start respecting those keywords.
Got it. And last follow-up question on that is that, can I assume that that issue, the respect when and allow failure and steps coming from Rails, on the runner side, we can implement an MR for that issue and not necessarily be dependent on any changes in the Rails team. We can just implement it and then the Rails team can figure out how to use it, kind of a thing? Is that kind of
Yes, so we can respect it, the one keyword, and at the moment Rails already sends the correct one
okay?
values for the before script and after script. So nothing will change, and then yeah, then we just enable the Rails team to do whatever they want.
Thank you.
Hey, Steve, I have another question. I didn't put in the agenda, but when can I share my screen?
Yeah, sure. Let me stop sharing.
Oops, let me do this. When I'm looking at the Rails issue, let me make sure. I have to clean up this description because I don't think it's accurate. There's a part that talks about backend part 2, about what would happen. It talks all about the handling of traces. And there's this note here that there would be an issue to be open for the runner to handle the new teardown state and specifically send traces for it. But it sounds to me that, are you handling that part already in the runner 4843 issue?
No, we will not handle it in 4843 because
Okay.
the runner needs to know which state or whatever the
Yeah.
Rails team will send
Okay.
to indicate, hey, stop whatever you're doing, just execute the after script because it's when graceful, for example,
Yeah.
and then continue whatever you're doing, right?
Yeah.
So at the moment, we need the Rails implementation either to be finished or to actually be set and done to actually start respecting it. We can, for example, at the moment, imagine that we can do it in 4843. We just call it teardown and then change it later on if we really want to. But it's something that both the Rails and runner code base need to be in sync
Yeah,
with.
but
to
I think
actually,
it's actually better to implement it the way that you described it, to add something in the runner, assume that it's going to be called teardown, and then when we are going to build Rails part, we will never miss that because the runner might not understand. Like it's going to be evident in the communication between runner and the GitLab that there is this teardown keyword being passed in payload, and that we need to recognize it. So I would rather assume and add, and then align, than
okay.
not to add and then forget about that and have
Yeah.
another issue scheduled and be
Yeah.
important year from
Yeah.
now.
Okay, I think that makes a lot of sense. Going
Yeah.
under assumptions and then we iterate later on to actually fix it. That would be a really small change for us to do. So yes, I fully agree with that.
Yeah, that might be more efficient going that way, Steve. And hopefully on the rail side, we won't cause too much, hopefully not at all, refactoring for you, but at least it'll let us move forward on the assumption. Yeah. Okay, in which case, back to my question, will I expect that a separate issue I'll need to link to mine for the handling of sending traces, or
No, that should be all done in 4843 because the runner will just assume, hey, I'm going to keep sending you traces, and it's just going to assume that it's going to accept them just because it's in a specific state. So there's
Okay.
no follow-up issues from the runner team or its team.
Great. I'll make a note of that I'll edit this description on the Rails issue.
Let's see if I have one question. If a runner sees that there is a job with interruptible graceful configure, and then it's going to see through the traces mechanism that a job has been canceled, shouldn't it actually assume that we still need to send traces, and we need them to
Probably that would be a better. That's what I was thinking right now, and I was going to go look at the code base to see if it's possible actually. But probably yes, we just say, hey, the job is cancelled. Let's just look at the one graceful and just assume that it's gonna keep accepting traces. So probably that is the way to do so. Not look at, hey, if the job is in teardown state, let's. And this makes it simpler for you folks as well, right? Like you don't have to expose a new state from the API level. You just do it from the DB or Ruby level.
Yeah, so perhaps we can do it this way. And then it's always a matter of iteration and aligning implementation so that we are catching all the edge cases. And
Yeah. But probably at the moment, that's what Lubomir's merge request is doing, actually. It's just assuming it's the cancel state and just assuming that the traces are available. So yeah. My final question is, I'm not sure how your workflow works on the Rails team, but who should be like the DIRI engineer on the Rails team so we can keep in sync from a technical details point of view?
I think that for the time being, it can probably be me. And then if we decide that someone else is
Okay.
going to be here, then I can like pass all the knowledge.
Okay. Sounds good.
Is that okay, Tao?
Yeah. I saw that the issue hasn't been picked up yet, but that makes sense to you for now until there's an engineer that, and if it's not you, that engineer can just.
Yeah, but please know that I'm going on vacation today,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'm the entire week.
Yeah. So you're. That just made it a funny statement to say you're the DRI, but you won't be available for the next week.
Yeah, but I don't know when we are going to actually work on that. So perhaps
agreed.
I'm going to start working on that when I'm back.
Agreed. Probably the best thing, Steve, although we're saying Gorge is going to be the DRI, as long as we keep all the details in the issue comments, another engineer can easily pick up.
Okay, that sounds really good. And that clears up a lot of questions I had. And me and Darren can work on finishing off that merge request to make it mergeable for 13.3. Do you have any questions, Darren?
No, I'm mainly catching up on this just here. I haven't really read much about this issue yet, but what you've discussed makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, we can always discuss the technical details later on together. So that's it for me.
And Chase, everyone, off to my next meeting. Have a good one. Bye.
See you all and have a nice Friday.